I discovered my soon-to-be ex-wife cheating about 7 months ago. The heartache, denial, and pain I went through were intense. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping it was all just a bad dream. But every time I saw her, the betrayal stung even more. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I spiraled into a deep depression, losing myself in the process. For months, I was a complete mess. I couldn't eat, sleep, or focus on anything. She must have noticed how distant I had become, but she never said anything. Maybe she didn't care, or maybe she just didn't want to face the truth. I assumed she knew I was aware of her affair, especially since I had checked out of the relationship entirely. About 2 months ago, I hit rock bottom and decided I was done. Done with her, done with our marriage. I couldn't keep living in this state of misery. I started making plans for a divorce and my new life. I avoided her as much as possible, staying out of the house when she was home. When we did interact, my responses were curt and to the point. Yes, no, maybe, or I don't know, became my standard replies. I even left the divorce lawyer bills out in the open, hoping she would get the hint. Our very perceptive kids asked me about it. I gave them the "we both love you, but sometimes grown-ups can't be together" speech. She was in the room when I talked to them, but she didn't object or comment. Her silence felt like consent to me. Then, a few days ago, I ran into Monica, an old school friend. We always had this unspoken chemistry between us, but nothing ever happened back then. Seeing her again was like a jolt of electricity. We caught up, and the connection was still there, even stronger than I remembered. Monica asked me out, but I explained my situation to my wife. I told her I wanted to be officially separated before starting anything new. Monica respected that and gave me her number, telling me to call her once everything was settled. That encounter with Monica was the push I needed. I went home, ready to confront my wife and get the separation process going. I was happy for the first time in months. I sat her down and told her everything. I told her I knew about her cheating, that I had checked out of our marriage months ago, and that I wanted to move on with my life. I asked her if she agreed that it was time for a divorce. Her reaction was not what I expected. She broke down in tears, the kind of desperate, soul-crushing sobs I had never heard before. She begged for a second chance, saying the affair meant nothing and that we could fix things with counseling. I was shocked. I thought she would be relieved. I told her she could be with the other guy without any guilt now. If he was so important to her, why did she cheat in the first place? I explained that if she wanted to fix our marriage, she should have done it before the affair. It was too late now. Our relationship was beyond repair. I didn't think we had any major problems, but if she did, she never talked to me about them. Instead, she chose to betray me and break our family apart. She tried to justify her actions, but I wasn't having it. I told her there was no way to undo the pain she caused me. I had moved past the point of caring about her. I felt indifferent, or even hateful towards her. I was only being civil for the sake of our kids. At this point, she became completely incoherent. I couldn't make sense of anything she was saying. I had to call her sister to take her away because I wasn't going to take care of her. When her sister arrived, I explained the situation. As they left, I felt a tremendous sense of relief. For the first time in 7 months, I could breathe. I still don't understand why she thought this wouldn't lead to a divorce. She must have known her actions would destroy our family. I can't figure out her motivation. Maybe she's scared I'll tell people about the affair, or maybe she doesn't want me to tell her affair partner's wife. Whatever the reason, it's too late for reconciliation. I have accepted that our marriage is over, and I am ready to move on with my life. After meeting Rachel, I was determined to confront Emily and end this charade of a marriage. I felt a strange sense of peace and purpose as I walked into our home that evening. I sat her down and told her we needed to talk. She looked wary, but not surprised. "I know about your affair," I said, my voice steady. "I've known for a long time. I assumed you knew that I knew, especially since I've been emotionally checked out for the last 3 months." Her face went pale, and her eyes filled with tears. I pressed on, telling her that I wanted to start dating again and move on with my life. I concluded with, "It's time for us to get divorced. Don't you agree?" Her reaction was nothing like I had anticipated. Instead of relief or resignation, she broke down in the most gut-wrenching sobs I had ever heard. She started blabbering excuses, asking for second chances, claiming the affair meant nothing and that we could fix things with counseling. I was stunned. I had thought she would be happy to be free, to be with her lover without guilt. I told her as much. You can go be with him now, without any guilt. He's more important to you than your family. If he wasn't, why did you go to him in the first place? Her sobs grew louder, and she shook her head violently. No, it wasn't like that. I was stupid. I thought it was just a fling. I never wanted to hurt you or the kids. I couldn't believe her audacity. If you believed we needed to fix our marriage, the time to do that was before you had the affair. Now, it's too late. It's broken beyond repair. Emily became completely incoherent at this point. Her words a jumbled mess of apologies and desperate pleas. I could see the realization hitting her that I was serious about the divorce. She begged for counseling, for any chance to make things right, but I was unmoved. I had to call her sister Amanda to come and take her away because I couldn't handle her emotional breakdown. Amanda arrived, her face a mixture of anger and sadness as I explained the situation. She took Emily away, leaving me in a house that suddenly felt much emptier but also lighter. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Now, reflecting on the confrontation, I was left with more questions than answers. How could Emily have been so naive to think there would be no consequences for her actions? Our marriage had been good, at least I thought it was, until she decided to throw it all away. Her sudden remorse and desperation were confusing. What did she hope to gain by pretending she wanted to fix things now? It was too late. The damage was done. I began to suspect ulterior motives. Could it be that she was afraid I would expose her affair and she would lose everything in the divorce? Her affair partner was married. Maybe she was scared I would tell his wife. None of it made sense, and I couldn't wrap my head around her behavior. Despite my anger and hurt, I knew I had to move forward. I was determined to build a new life for myself and my kids. They were my priority, and I would do everything in my power to protect them and give them a stable future. I booked an STI test for myself and DNA tests for the kids. Just thinking they might not be mine was a nightmare, but I had to be sure for their sake. I also realized that I needed to get legal advice on how to handle the divorce. I wasn't going to let Emily's actions ruin me financially or emotionally any more than they already had. I wanted to make sure everything was done fairly and that I could move on without any lingering ties to the past. As for Rachel, I knew we had to wait. I couldn't start anything new until the divorce was finalized. We agreed to stay in touch, but keep things platonic for now. She understood and respected my decision, which made me even more eager to see where things could go once the dust settled. In the meantime, I focused on my kids. I arranged individual and family counseling, planned trips to create new memories, and made sure they felt loved and supported. Their well-being was my top priority, and I would not let Emily's betrayal affect their happiness any more than it already had. Emily's breakdown had been a turning point for me. I realized that no matter how much she begged or cried, I could never trust her again. Without trust, there could be no relationship. My love for her had died the moment I discovered her betrayal. The person I had loved was gone, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. I decided to act as fairly as possible during the divorce, dividing our assets equally and sharing custody of the kids. Despite everything, I wanted to be able to look back and know that I had done the right thing for my children's sake. I would remember the good times we had, but I would not let them cloud my judgment. Saturday came and I went to see her. Her sister had warned me that she was not in good shape, and she was right. Emily looked terrible. Bloodshot eyes, swollen face, unkempt hair. She was a shadow of her former self. We sat down and she started shaking uncontrollably. I felt a strange detachment, like I was watching a movie. It confirmed that I no longer loved her. She tried to speak but kept breaking down. Finally, she managed to apologize, not trying to shift the blame. Her sister cried too, occasionally berating her. Emily admitted that she never thought I would find out or that anyone would get hurt. She had convinced herself that the affair would pass and we would go back to our happy family life. She broke up with the affair partner about a month and a half ago, realizing the damage she had done. She showed me her phone, where she had blocked him. Messages from him poured in, revealing her attempts to re-engage with me had been genuine. I asked her why she thought she had the right to do this to us, to our children. Her answers were selfish, and I knew I would never get the closure I sought. There was no acceptable reason for cheating, but I did find some peace in her admission of guilt and the acknowledgement of the pain she had caused. Emily begged for a second chance, but I told her I didn't believe her. I had no trust left. She asked what she could do to fix it, but I had no answers. I told her if she was in my shoes, she would understand why I couldn't forgive her. I informed her that I had taken an STI test and would be doing DNA tests for the kids. She broke down again, insisting this was the only time she had cheated. She promised to tell her affair partner's wife and everyone else, even going to HR to confess. By the end of our exhausting 5-hour conversation, I told her clearly that the love I had for her was dead. Our family had died by her hand, and there was no going back. I suggested we go with no contact for a while to gain some perspective. I told her I had already filed for divorce and that my mind was made up. As she left, she cried uncontrollably, pleading with me to reconsider. I drove her and her sister to the ER when she fainted from the stress. When I learned she would be okay, I finally felt a sense of closure. The next day, her affair partner's wife called me to confirm what Emily had told her. I sent her copies of the evidence and suggested we meet. She had been suspecting for a long time but had nothing solid. Despite the turmoil, I knew I had to stay strong for my kids. I felt guilty, but I also knew that dragging out the pain wouldn't help anyone. It was time to end this chapter and start rebuilding my life. Saturday came, and I knew it was going to be a tough day. Emily's sister had warned me that she was in bad shape, but I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Emily looked like a shell of her former self. Bloodshot eyes, swollen face, unkempt hair. She had not been eating or sleeping. As we sat down, she began shaking uncontrollably. I felt a surprising calm, a detachment from the situation. It was like watching a tragic movie unfold, confirming that I no longer loved her. She tried to speak several times but kept breaking down into tears. I waited patiently, giving her the space to collect herself. When she finally started talking, it was like a dam burst. She apologized repeatedly, not trying to shift the blame or make excuses. Her sister, who had joined us, cried too and occasionally berated her. It became clear that her sister had warned her this would happen, but Emily had ignored the advice. Emily confessed that her affair had been a result of a midlife crisis. She had gotten infatuated with a coworker and convinced herself that she deserved this fling. She thought it would be a temporary thing that would not harm our family. She broke up with the affair partner about a month and a half ago, realizing the buzz had worn off and the damage she had done. She showed me her phone, where she had blocked him, and messages from him poured in, trying to rekindle their affair. I asked her what gave her the right to do this to us, to our children. Her answers were selfish, and I knew I would never get the closure I was looking for because there were no acceptable answers for cheating. However, I did find a strange sense of peace in her acknowledgement of the pain she had caused and the fact that our marriage was broken because of her actions. She begged for a second chance, swearing she would do anything to make it right. I told her I didn't believe her. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be rebuilt with words. She asked what she could do to fix it, but I had no solutions for her. If she didn't know how to mend what she broke, how could I provide an answer? She admitted that if the roles were reversed, she probably wouldn't forgive me either. I informed her that I had taken an STI test and planned to DNA test the kids. Her breakdown at this news was intense. She insisted this was the only time she had cheated, but I had no reason to believe her. She agreed that the affair partner's wife deserved to know and promised to tell her. I wasn't sure if she would follow through, but it didn't matter to me anymore. Emily offered me a one-sided open marriage, access to all her communications, and 24/7 availability. I told her I wasn't interested. I didn't want to be her jailer, constantly snooping and being suspicious. I also told her about Rachel, and that I wasn't going to start anything until we were legally separated because I didn't want to cheat. After hours of talking, we were both exhausted. I reiterated that the love I had for her had died, that I didn't recognize her anymore, and that our family had died by her hand. I suggested we go no contact for a while to get some distance and perspective. I told her I had already filed for divorce and that my mind was made up. We could start family therapy to co-parent, but beyond that, I didn't want to see her. As she left, she cried uncontrollably, pleading with me to reconsider. Her nose started bleeding explosively, and she fainted. I managed to catch her before she hit the floor and drove her and her sister to the ER. I stayed until I knew she would be okay, then left. That night, Emily began telling everyone what she had done. Her affair partner's wife, Lisa, called me the next morning to confirm the story. I sent her copies of the evidence. She kicked her husband out and wanted to meet to discuss more details. I suggested we sit down for dinner as she needed to talk. Despite all the turmoil, I knew I had to stay strong for my kids. I felt a lot of guilt, wondering if there was anything I could have done differently. Friends and relatives called, some cursing me out, others advising me to give Emily a second chance. But I knew dragging out the pain wouldn't help anyone. It was better to end it cleanly and start healing. My mind was in a dark place, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I focused on rebuilding my life and being the best father I could be. It was time to start a new chapter, even if the transition was painful. As the divorce proceedings moved forward, I found myself slowly regaining a sense of normalcy. The chaos of the past months started to fade, replaced by a new routine focused on healing and rebuilding. My children became the center of my world. I threw myself into being the best father I could be, arranging individual and family counseling sessions to help them cope with the upheaval. We planned trips, spent quality time together, and created new memories to replace the painful ones. I also involved my extended family, ensuring that my kids were surrounded by love and support. Their teachers and coaches were kept in the loop, providing a solid support system wherever they went. My primary goal was to make them feel secure and loved, no matter what. During this time, I also worked on myself. The DNA test results came back, confirming that the kids were indeed mine. It was a huge relief, lifting a weight I hadn't fully realized I was carrying. The STI tests were clear, giving me peace of mind on that front as well. With these worries behind me, I could focus more on my mental and emotional recovery. Emily's behavior remained erratic. She would swing between desperate pleas for reconciliation and angry outbursts. Her messages and calls became less frequent as she realized I wasn't going to change my mind. I kept our interactions strictly about the kids and the divorce, maintaining firm boundaries to protect my newfound stability. Rachel and I continued to stay in touch, but we both agreed to keep things platonic until the divorce was finalized. Our conversations were a bright spot in my day, and her understanding and support were invaluable. She respected my need to sort out my personal life before starting something new, which only made me appreciate her more. Despite the support from Rachel and others, I faced judgment from some friends and family members. They urged me to give Emily another chance, to try counseling or reconciliation. But I knew my decision was the right one. Trust, once broken, couldn't be easily mended. Dragging out the pain would only prolong the inevitable. It was better for everyone to make a clean break and move on. The final meeting with Emily was tough. Her appearance was even more haggard than before, and it was clear she wasn't taking care of herself. We discussed the final details of the divorce, and I reiterated that there was no chance of reconciliation. She offered everything from an open marriage to constant surveillance, but I wasn't interested. The love I once had for her was gone, replaced by a deep-seated hurt that could never be healed. We agreed to go no contact for a while, except for matters concerning the kids. This distance was necessary for both of us to gain perspective and start healing. Emily's sister helped her through the transition, but I knew I had to focus on my own path forward. With the legalities settled, I turned my attention to the future. I started exercising more, picking up old hobbies and trying new ones. I needed to rebuild my self-esteem and find joy in life again. I also joined a few support groups, both online and offline, where I connected with others who had gone through similar experiences. Their stories and advice were a source of strength and comfort. One day, Rachel and I decided to meet up for coffee. It felt like a natural progression from our phone conversations, and I was excited, yet nervous. Seeing her again in person was a revelation. The chemistry between us was undeniable, and our connection felt even stronger. We agreed to take things slow, understanding that my life was still in transition, but the promise of a new beginning was thrilling. As I navigated these new waters, I kept reminding myself of the core principles I had set: honesty, integrity, and fairness. I wanted to look back on this period of my life and feel proud of how I handled it. I wanted to be a role model for my kids, showing them that even in the face of betrayal and heartbreak, it was possible to rebuild and find happiness again. In the months that followed, I continued to focus on my kids, my personal growth, and my budding relationship with Rachel. There were ups and downs, moments of doubt and moments of clarity, but through it all, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and hope. Emily eventually settled into her new life as well. We maintained a civil co-parenting relationship, putting the needs of our children first. Over time, the raw pain of her betrayal dulled, replaced by a more detached understanding of our past. I could see her as the mother of my children without the intense anger and hurt that once consumed me. Looking back, I realized that the experience had made me stronger. I had faced one of the most challenging periods of my life and emerged with a clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted. The future was uncertain, but it was also full of possibilities. Rachel and I continued to grow closer, and my relationship with my kids deepened as we navigated this new chapter together. We were creating a new family dynamic, one based on trust, love, and mutual respect. In the end, I found peace. It wasn't an easy journey, and there were still days when the memories would sting, but I had learned to live with them. They were part of my story, a testament to my resilience and capacity for growth. As I moved forward, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them with strength and hope. So, here we are, turning the page to a brand new chapter. With the divorce finally behind me, life started to make sense again. It wasn't easy, but the storm had passed, and I found myself standing on solid ground. The focus now? My kids, my life, and what comes next. The kids were my anchor. We built new routines that made our house feel like a home again. Every Friday was game night, and Saturdays were for exploring the outdoors. We laughed more, shared more, and created memories that started to outshine the darker ones. They knew they could talk to me about anything, and I made sure they felt heard and loved every single day. Emily and I managed to keep things civil, mainly for the kids' sake. We stuck to our co-parenting plan and kept our conversations strictly about the kids. It was weird at first, but over time, it became the new normal. We even attended their school events together without any drama, which was a win in my book. As for me, I found solace in old hobbies and discovered new ones. Painting became my escape. I'd lose myself in the colors and strokes, each piece a step towards healing. Running was another outlet. I signed up for local races and felt a sense of accomplishment every time I crossed the finish line. It wasn't just about the physical benefits. It cleared my mind and helped me think straight. Rachel and I took things slow. We stayed in touch, but there was no rush. We both knew my life was still a bit of a mess, and jumping into something new wouldn't be fair to either of us. We enjoyed our conversations, and her understanding meant the world to me. When we did meet for coffee, it was like no time had passed. The connection was real, but we agreed to let it grow naturally. Work was another area where I threw my energy. I tackled new projects and aimed for that promotion I had my eye on. It wasn't just about career growth. It was about proving to myself that I could rebuild and succeed. My colleagues were supportive, and it felt good to focus on something productive. Forgiveness was a tough nut to crack. I had to let go of the anger towards Emily. It wasn't easy, but I realized holding on to that bitterness only hurt me more. So I chose to remember the good times and move on from the bad. It lightened the load and made it easier to look forward. Looking ahead, my goals were clear. Be the best dad I could be. Continue growing in my career. Keep learning and challenging myself. I wanted to set a good example for my kids and show them that life can get better, even after a tough blow. Rachel and I, we kept our pace. We didn't rush into anything. We talked about our dreams and plans, but always with a sense of caution and respect for the journey I was still on. It felt good to have someone who understood and didn't push for more than I was ready to give. Life had its ups and downs, but I was in a better place. The betrayal had scarred me, but it hadn't broken me. I was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. The future was wide open, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited about it. So, here's to new beginnings, to rebuilding and moving forward, to finding joy in the little things and knowing that no matter what, I had the strength to overcome. The road ahead might be uncertain, but I was ready to take the first step and see where it led.